we see the rise of what's called the shadow fleet.
Shadow fleet, dark fleet, ghost fleet. Sinister synonyms for decrepit vessels with questionable ownership.
Shadow fleet is essentially several hundred ships that have been acquired by we don't know who for the purpose of transporting Russian oil.
This is the story of the Russian Shadow Fleet, a vast network of ships that operate in secret, dodging sanctions, smuggling oil and undermining the security of Europe's seas. And in the Baltic Sea, there is a special reason to be concerned. The Baltic Sea is not just a body of water. It is a front line, a battleground without gunfire, where nations clash through espionage, economic pressure and covert operations. It fuels the Russian war machine, erodes European security and directly challenges the sovereignty of nations like Finland, Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania. So, what is the Shadow Fleet? How does it work? And most importantly, how do we fight back? Let's dive in. To understand the Shadow Fleet, we need to go back to 2022. Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine had triggered unprecedented Western sanctions.
EU leaders have agreed on an immediate partial embargo of Russian oil imports.
The European Union and its allies banned Russian oil imports and put price caps on Moscow's ability to sell its energy. This was a devastating blow to Russia, as oil exports are the lifeline of its economy and, more importantly, the main source of funding for its military. The Kremlin, however, is no stranger to economic warfare. When faced with financial isolation, it responded the only way it knows how, by finding loopholes, by bending the rules, and by creating a system so convoluted that tracking it becomes a nightmare. Enter the Shadow Fleet. The Shadow Fleet is an unofficial armada of aging, poorly maintained oil tankers with obscure ownership, hidden identities and forged paperwork. These ships, often stripped of proper safety standards, sail under flags of convenience, Panama, Liberia or even entirely fictitious registries.
A Russian ship is making its way from St. Petersburg across the Baltic Sea.
They operate outside international regulations, turn off their tracking systems and take dangerous, winding routes to smuggle Russian oil to willing buyers in Asia and beyond.
You have these vessels that don't exist on paper, but they're right here in front of my eyes, but nobody knows who's controlling them.
Now, you might ask, how does a network of rogue tankers manage to keep Russia's oil flowing despite sanctions? The answer lies in deception and a healthy dose of Western complacency. Many of these vessels simply disappear from satellite tracking. They switched off their transponders in the Baltic Sea or the Arctic, vanish for days and reappear near a neutral port, Turkey, India or China, with a new cargo and a different identity. Besides, ownership of these tankers is hidden behind layers of dummy corporations in tax havens. If one ship gets caught, the Kremlin simply moves to the next one. Some of these tankers are escorted by Russian icebreakers, allowing them to navigate the frozen Arctic and reach Asia through the Northern Sea route. This not only bypasses Western scrutiny, but also builds Russia's influence over the Arctic trade routes.
The sanctions that have been taken are effectively being dodged by those that are willing to actually participate.
The scale of this operation is staggering. Some estimates suggest that Russia is using over 600 ships in this fleet, many of which should have been scrapped years ago. These ships are accidents waiting to happen, ticking ecological time bombs drifting through European waters. Many have already caused oil spills over the years.
It is extremely serious and it is extremely risky. These oil tankers are carrying over 100,000 tons of crude oil that is toxic to humans and to the environment and will put waste to our coastlines for decades if a big accident happens.
For Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania, the Shadow Fleet is more than an economic loophole. It is a security risk. These ships frequently pass through the Baltic Sea, often too close to NATO waters. Some of these vessels are not just oil tankers, but intelligence gathering tools. Russia has a long history of using civilian ships as spy assets, mapping undersea cables, monitoring naval activities, and gathering intelligence on NATO movements. These innocent tankers could be a cover for something much more sinister. For instance, in December 2024, Finland seized a Russian tanker which cut a cable in its waters. Guess what they discovered on board? Goods? Not at all. Spying equipment? Definitely not for sale.
We know that there are a number of Russian ships, classic ships, that can serve both civilian and military purposes. These are all ships that are prefixed with the words academic or professor. They can be equipped with measurement technology, such as high-resolution acoustic sensors or underwater video systems.
These aging ships are ecological disasters waiting to happen. A deliberate oil spill in the Baltic Sea could cause massive environmental and economic damage to the coastal nations. Russia has a long history of using environmental destruction as a form of hybrid warfare, so this is not an exaggeration, it is a real and present danger. The good news, NATO, the EU and the Baltic states are not blind to this threat. Several countermeasures are already in motion, but the battle is far from over. First of all, the West has ramped up efforts to monitor suspicious vessels using advanced satellite tracking, artificial intelligence and maritime patrols. Estonia, in particular, has been pushing for better regional coordination in tracking these ships.
In freezing temperatures in the middle of the Baltic Sea, naval forces from 15 different NATO countries tested underwater surveillance drones and practiced maneuvers to defend critical underwater infrastructure against Russian attacks.
The EU is working to tighten loopholes, imposing secondary sanctions on companies that help facilitate shadow trade. The US and UK have also sanctioned shipping firms involved in the trade. In January, the Joint Expeditionary Force has launched an artificial intelligence-based reaction system for monitoring threats the Shadow Fleet poses for underwater cables. In addition, Baltic NATO members have increased naval patrols to monitor suspicious ship movements. The alliance is also reinforcing undersea infrastructure security, ensuring that Russia cannot use the cover of these vessels to sabotage critical infrastructure. For the Baltic states, this is a matter of national security, so naturally they are pushing NATO for a stronger maritime presence in the region. Estonia has advocated for a joint NATO task force dedicated to monitoring Russian shipping activity. Every suspicious vessel is tracked, every movement analyzed. The Russian Shadow Fleet is more than an economic workaround. It is a weapon. A weapon that funds war, enables espionage, and threatens the stability of Europe's waters while operating covertly. Thank you for watching. If you found this analysis informative, make sure to like, share and subscribe. Until next time, stay vigilant and stay informed.